We do work with the members to individually and collectively on how they want to message. So, but no specific budget amount to the members.
I know in the legislature, and I sent out a survey not too long ago, and getting good response is an important function, I would argue, for mail, and it's an important part of a budget. But I know that we can only mail within certain windows. Yes. With regard to elections and those kinds of things. I'm assuming that those considerations are observed.
Pardon me. Every mailing that we do does go through a clearance process, and our legal staff as well looks at those kind of issues in order to make sure that it is an appropriate piece that the state can spend money on. So we do very diligently look at that issue.
Mr. Mullen, last year we did impose the same restrictions in terms of when we can mail that the legislature has. So I think it's 3 months before the June election, 3 months before the November. That's a blackout period, a window that we are not going to mail as well. Self-imposed.
We'll come back. So, please. No, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, I missed the part about the vacancies, Mr. Gao. How many vacant positions are there in the department now? And can you give us a sense of the status of those? Like how many of those are, being posted, listed? You're in the process of hiring for?
I just received information. We have 478. I don't have the. I will. While we're sitting here, or someone can provide me the information on how many we actually have in recruitment currently.
I guess given the number of vacancies, it's hard for us to just do a blanket, putting that blanket number into the budget. So I think at this point, the recommendation will be to hold those until we get further explanation back in terms of what process they are, what they are, what they're being used for.
Okay. Seems like I'm hearing a motion, but that should be probably made by Mr. Mullen. Do you move the motion that the budget chair just made? Okay. You have to move the motion. Okay. I'll second that.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I have been taking notes, and there's 3 items that you want us to get back to you on.
I'm happy to get to those, but okay. I'm still working through some of the questions I had about the buildings, and I guess at this point, what I'm interested to know is, are there discussions about having board members go back to the building, or what prioritization is there in place to try to review consolidation?
There has not been any conversations about members moving back, but I know personally I have been talking with DGS to see whether we can figure out a new location for everyone to be housed, including bringing the board members back in to that same location. We met with the new DGS director, David Kim, I think in December. He would like to work with us. Mr. Gao just got appointed April 1st, but that is a priority. We think there is a pathway for us to find a new location where everyone could be housed in one location.
Sorry to do this a little unorthodox. So since there is a motion and it's been seconded, I'm going to call roll call for us to vote.
The motion is to hold open the 478 positions that are currently vacant. Nazarian?
Aye.
Allen? Cooper? Mullen?
Aye.
Wilk?
Not voting.
Okay, so that item will stay open for now. going back to the question I had before, I kind of asked several questions at once, so I'll just pare it down to one by one. Has there been a cost-benefit analysis done to see if it would be of greater benefit and savings to the state and the BOE if there is a consolidation plan versus, again, the current expenditures of, again, going off of what SACB is reporting of $740,000 a year? And I'd be interested to also, when you are getting us verifying these numbers, I'd be interested to know what the total cost has been since 2007 when the board first moved out, and what the expenditures have been like since that time, since the remediation work started.
Okay. So the main conversation that has occurred, as Chairman Mahmoud has discussed, is more of an effort to re-site the entire agency, the headquarters piece of it, to bring it downtown. So I think that we have not had the direct conversation about members reoccupying, as Ms. Ma said too.
Okay. So has there anyone, given almost 5,000 staff, has there anyone who has looked at cost-benefit analysis and at what point you should try to consolidate again, and or what the costs are with having so many different offices and whether or not it's in the best benefit?
DGS, the Department of General Services, often does a lot of our site search or cost allocation for us in order to help us find facilities. We could provide the committee the information on what we do expend, because not only are the members, obviously, as we do have those 6 annex locations for the remainder of the staff that are outside of the 450 N Street location as well. So, and then I think often the other number that does get put into the equation is the amount of expenditures that on the repairs and maintenance of that 450 N Street location that have occurred since the 2007 period as well. Whether it's the new seals on the windows or the new windows that we need, or the remediation effort. So there's quite a number of projects over the years that have cost, and we could get that number probably from the Department of General Services, how much expenditures have been made to try and repair and maintain the building.
Okay, but my focus isn't the building. It's the cost of the ongoing leasing outside of the building. So so from what I'm hearing, no one's actually looked at seeing how much that's cost the state overall and what the accurate numbers are.
So what I was just provided is what we have looked at is there is a bond that is outstanding on the building. Oftentimes that's really what is the payment that the cost that's been looked at is in relation to the bond indebtedness on the building. We could certainly provide the lease information of our facilities as well that are outside that headquarters operation. The annex.
So as I understand, when I met with the Department of General Services, Mr. Gao was not the director at the time. DGS does have a cost estimate in terms of what it would cost in terms of paying off our bonds, but as well as the cost savings if everybody was brought back together. I will check to see if our offices have that, but I have not seen that yet. And if we don't have that, we will figure out how to get that number.
Mr. Chair, I just note that unfortunately, our capital outlay counterparts aren't here today with us, but definitely, as part of the downtown infrastructure study that was done, the BOE building was included as part of that analysis. Unfortunately, it did fall kind of out of the
it's nowhere near the
top 10 of needs. However, it is something that we continue to look at, and to the extent that we can consolidate the Sacramento offices, that is something that we are interested in.
Could I just follow up on the chair's question? I think what we're trying to get a better understanding for is outside of the main building, you have a number of leases, and outside of your obligations in various state buildings around the state, what is the cost of those leases?
We do. We can provide the committee that information. I don't have it at the table, but I certainly can provide that. We do have a lease data summary sheet.
Thank you.
Okay. I still have a few other questions. And again, in light of some of the articles that have come out, my understanding is that the board changed the review for the procurements of certain amounts within a certain amount or under a certain amount. So can you elaborate a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit more?
That's not my area.
Currently, the conferring powers on the executive director allow for, require that any contract of $1 million or more does need to come before the board for approval.
I'm sorry, how?
$1 million or more needs to come to the board for approval, board approval.
So less than $1 million doesn't?
That is delegated then to the executive director.
And how does the executive director make that decision? Based on what tenants? What factors?
Well, there's a number of different variety of contract types. So I work with the program areas, whether it's supporting tax program areas or often some of our larger expenditures are technology related. So we work with the different department directors to procure and enter into contracts.
Regarding procurement, so then in order to procure things like office furniture, what's the approval process? Is that something that the executive director has full discretion in her or yours authority just to blanket approve? And given what's been sort of brought to light in the press, has the board taken action to address that procurement process?
It is something that in my new role that I am looking at very closely, and there is a system of elevation of thresholds for approval. That they work their way up usually through a division chief or a deputy director, and so.
So when can we expect revision in policy that will be brought to light? So, Ms. Harkey, Member Harkey.
Once again, I'm sorry to interject here, but we have, Ms. Ma and I, since we began, we now review all the procurements under 50,000, over $1 million, come to the board, but we review them all and contracts. I won't sit here and tell you that I know what each and every one of them is for. And we do have an executive director who has been with the board for 27, 28 years, worked his way up, highly qualified. Be happy to show you his resume. But we just put him in the spot because he understands what the needs are. Our biggest procurements seem to be in the IT areas, and I would expect that is and also our biggest personnel needs. So before you go pulling back on the vacancies, we have the new CROSS program being implemented. I think there was a request for 95.
Yeah, we're working on a May revise.
On a May revise for positions for that. That is underway. It's a huge computer reprogramming and implementation that's been underway for a while, and so that's going to be really important in order to be tracking all of the fees and assessments and other things that we do, and also be reporting to various agencies and getting the cash flow through to the controller. But we do, as board members, have an office budget. The mail budget, generally speaking, the mail that we do, just to clarify, the mail that we do is Board of Equalization mail. It's not member mail. It goes out in my district, but it's not member mail. It's for board events. They are civil service functions. We have auditors there, sales and use tax explanations. So that's a huge part of what we do as far as education.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, but the names are your name is on the mail.
Right. We are elected in
Yeah.
the district, so our
Yeah.
name is on the mail. It has to be a certain height, just like your mail does.
Understood. Yeah, I'm
Right.
just clarifying. I mean, it is from the board, but it's from their elected
Right,
board member.
because I'm
They're
elected,
communicating
right.
that information.
Yeah, we're elected in our
Yeah,
district.
sure.
But these programs are not run by board members. They are run by the staff, the civil service staff. So I just wanted to clarify that. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be glad to get you what you need. We had a list of questions that you asked, and we responded to those, but we're getting some different ones now, and so we'll be happy to get you whatever you need. It's a huge organization, no doubt, and there are a lot of technical responsibilities and a lot of privileged information.
I don't disagree, and I
Right.
very much understand, especially given how recently you've arrived. I completely understand.
We're
But
trying to get our hands around all of it. It's
I guess what I'm also trying to speak to is the fact that you are an agency that's responsible for individuals' tax collection.
Right.
And so, given your expertise, given how uniquely your office is situated, there are certain numbers that I would assume you would be maintaining and keeping and very much on top of in order to be able to internally also better review your trends and understanding where you're going as an agency. For example, the next question that I was going to be asking, and this is not directed to you, Ms. Harkey, but I want to know a little bit more about your appeals process and how you track your appeals.
Well, funny you should mention that. I think you did.
Good.
You did request that, and
did.
we have that in item number 6. It was reported. We are. I cannot speak for all board members, but I do believe that the appeals are being. We shouldn't be. They should be. I would like to see more of this come back to the district offices so we can administer them rather than at a headquarters level, because I think we could settle these things out. There weren't. I don't believe, in my personal opinion, this is not a board, but that they should have increased that much, and we should have so much sitting in appeals. I am questioning whether there's not some. What the cost benefit is to us, because if files get stale or tax appeals get stale, the likelihood of anyone having the ability to make that payment or the collection effort involved in trying to retrieve that, they should be a pretty quick process, and especially with the 2008 crash, and we had a lot of people that just went under. And so we are looking at that now. As you can see, they've grown from 08, 699 to 2007, in fiscal year 14-15. That's a huge increase. And if it's people that, if we've got individuals, businesses, people that can truly pay, we should know that and get it done and collect that. Those that where we need to go to an offer and compromise, we probably just should do it. Because I think I'm not happy with that number. But that's me. I'm only one board member. And settlements, appeals and settlements individually. So I think we can be more aggressive and we can weed some of these things out. But that is a management decision to be made by the board as to how we want to proceed. We have made several changes in the past year to try to expedite processes. This is one that was glaring to me as to why these should grow so much. And so I'm going to be looking at that. But we've given staff greater ability, a little more flexibility in what they can do to settle some of these items. And appeals is one of the areas that I think we really need to work on.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey, Mr. Chair. One question was, does the board track the decisions made by each of the appeals cases, the completed cases?
Yes. Some of these are handled not at the board level, they are handled in the appeals department, and they square them away. The ones that reach the board level, we do have that tracking. I actually saw it on an Excel spreadsheet today.
Okay.
I don't know that I brought that with me because I wasn't planning on talking so much, but I think it's very important for you to understand that it's just really totally different over there than it is in the legislature, and it's a 5-member board, and it's whatever I might want to do, I have to be sure I have the votes to do.
Great. And just regarding to either Mr. Gow or the rest of the staff, do you have any records of what's done at the appeals office level?
So based on some of the questions that were presented to us, I know that they asked us for the oral hearing appeals. We had some clarification. We will be working on that to provide that to your office as well. As it relates to the appeal and settlement program, do you want to go into? No?
Could you say what you would specifically providing our office?
Well, I was specifically asked today for the actual oral hearing for FTB that is adjudicated by our board members, and so.
And then what about the hearings themselves that are not adjudicated, but that are just decided within your appeals division?
What we'd like to do is work with your committee and find out specifically what you'd like to see and what you'd like to know, and if we have a clear understanding of the questions,
Great.
We'd like to not only provide you with that information, but also with how it's calculated and so forth, so that you have an understanding.
And then are all appeals taken, or are some of them just summarily dismissed because they lack credence or evidence? Are they all investigated?
They're pretty much, once they receive, once the appeals division, and my name is Jeff Vest, I'm an attorney with the board.
Thank you.
Once the appeals are received by the appeals division, our role, depending upon the tax program, but primarily our role is to provide an impartial and independent review of every single one of those cases. Now, some may get resolved before we actually start the process, but most of the time, with the business tax appeals, when we're talking just the tax and fees related to businesses that our board administers, that we call just the business tax process. When we receive those, the first thing we do is schedule an appeals conference. And it's at that appeals conference, because we are this independent review. We sit down and the parties present their case, and they have an opportunity to present their evidence. And then we review the matter and write a decision and recommendation. Generally, through that process of basically reviewing everything and asking for more information, we're able to write a recommendation, and a lot of times the taxpayers accept that. A lot of cases are resolved at that level. There's a few things they could do before they accept the determination. We may ask for a re-audit. They may ask for us to reconsider some issues. But this process is completely independent of the department's work and the audit. It's after the protest, and when it comes to us, primarily most of the cases get resolved this way. A certain percentage do get elevated if the taxpayers want to elevate it to an oral board, arguments before the board, then they have that right. But that's a very small percentage that actually go up to the board level. Most of them get resolved in this process. And this process is statutorily laid out. It also has built-in time frames so that the case is pushed through. For instance, when we have all the information, we have 90 days to issue a decision on each of these cases and so forth.
Great. I think it'd be helpful if you could break out some of those categories. For example, when I was the assessor, we would break out into categories in terms of our appeals that were, settled either prior or at hearing, appeals that we were overturned, appeals that the appeals board agreed with us. I mean, I think breaking those out into those categories would give us a little more better understanding as to what's going on.
Sure.
In terms of appealing your decisions, your decision is final. There's no further appeal of your decision. Is that correct?
You mean for the entire agency, the Board of Equalization?
Correct.
No, actually, our decisions as we issue them are final as far as the liability goes, and so they become collectible. the taxpayer always has the option to pay the tax and file a lawsuit, a claim for refund, and then a lawsuit in Superior Court. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've covered quite a few areas that I think some of us wanted to focus on, and some of the issues that also came out during the conversation. But I was of developing a mindset of wanting to actually ask for a motion to further cut the general fund component of your budget by another $740,000, and for you to then find those monies, or for it to be an incentive for you to then figure out how to quickly reincorporate the board into the building. But instead of doing that, I look forward to your leadership, to the board's leadership, and trying to figure out how to consolidate back and make sure that you're operating alongside with your staff in one cohesive unit. So I won't be asking for that motion, but at this point, we'll move forward with the other parts of your presentation. We had done issue item 2, and at this now it's issue number 3, Appeals Division's Business Tax Program and Settlement Workload. This item will be held open, but if you'd like to make a quick presentation.
Absolutely. The Board of Equalization is requesting $5.1 million in 30 positions. That's the continuation of 22 limited term positions and 8 additional positions for fiscal year 2016-17, and $5 million in fiscal year 2017-18 and ongoing to address the workload for the Appeals Division, Business Tax Section, and the Settlement Program. The Appeals and Settlement Program both perform legal services in cases where taxpayer and fee payer dispute tax and fee liabilities. The Appeal Program holds appeal conferences and prepare independent and neutral legal review of business tax disputes that arise once a billing has been issued by the agency and the taxpayer has, in response, filed a petition for redetermination. The Settlement Program conducts administrative settlement negotiation on disputed tax liabilities based on the risk and the cost of litigation. The Southern California Appeals and Settlement Unit was established October 1st, 2010 to address significant increases in incoming workload that began in fiscal year 2007-2008 recession. The pilot position was successfully accelerated the resolution of an additional 3,206 cases valued at $477.8 million since the pilot's inception. The positions for the pilot were originally established to work the ending inventories of cases. However, the incoming workload for the Appeals and Settlement Program as a whole has increased throughout the initial 4-year pilot and the subsequent 2-year continuation of the pilot. From fiscal year 2010 to 11 through fiscal year 2014-15, incoming workload for both programs combined has increased by 108%. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I just had a question, which is why, what's leading you to believe that this is a permanent inventory jump in appeals? I see your appeals jump from 830 incoming cases to 2,500. Do you believe that to be permanent, or is that something you think is just temporary?
Hello, Amy Kelly, Legal Department, BOE. So we've been managing these 22 additional positions for both appeals and settlement workload since 2010-11. And each time that we've come back with a BCP, we've been conservative and expected that increase to level off. That has not happened. So when we came with the first BCP, we requested 22 limited term positions to be added to address this new additional workload that we were seeing. When we came back the second time in 2014-15, we requested that the 22 limited term positions be made permanent, and we requested 4 additional positions to address the rising inventory levels. And that was us thinking, okay, this is going to level off. This is what we need to handle the the new additional workload. That BCP was approved at 22 limited term positions.
Why do you think there's been an increase in appeals?
Oh, I see. I apologize. I was getting to why the inventory keeps rising, because we're conservative. But we think that what's going on is that since 2007 and 8, businesses have simply adopted a new way to handle their tax liabilities. So to enter into the administrative process to dispute a tax liability, whether it's an appeal or a settlement that the taxpayer is seeking, they do not need to pay the disputed amount. So they can come into the process and take their time determining what is. So
are you developing a process to have a more speedy resolution? Because that seems to make complete sense. So given this, I'm sure that in 10 years we're going to have 2.5 million cases given that situation, because it's a great deal. I can save a few $1 million in taxes, put them in an investment, wait a couple years to dispute it, and then come pay taxes. So given that situation, what are you going to do as a department to ensure this resolution? Because why should we pay to create an incentive for businesses to earn interest on their tax dollars that they're not paying?
Well, of course, when things don't go the taxpayer's way, if the liability is affirmed, then they owe interest for taking their time. So the state gets paid.
What's the percent of interest?
Right now it's, what is it, about 8%, 8.5%?
So it's fairly high.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I can just add a little bit more to Ms. Kelly's presentation. We believe that what we've been able to see over time is literally a paradigm shift for the small and medium-sized businesses. After this deep recession, we believe that they started to really act differently, behave differently, to protect their bottom line, to keep their doors open, to be able to pay their employees. And so they now are aggressively pursuing every part of the process that they possibly can and elevating things through the process. It's a learned behavior, and so we've seen an increase year after year since the recession. It's taken California a long time to climb out of that recession. Keep in mind that, and I just, in thinking about the process itself, we do want a process that provides these opportunities. It's just the behavior has changed, and so as we've added these positions, we've been able to pretty much keep up on it, but we at some point would expect it to level off as this aggressive behavior might taper a bit. So that's why we've been conservative. Your legislature specifically said that in Revenue and Taxation Code 7081, you know, between citizens of the state and their government, the most sensitive point is taxes. And so they mandated our board to take basically steps to provide the taxpayer with every opportunity to prevent their evidence concerning their tax liability. And that's what this process does, is it provides them with an opportunity to present their evidence, to have a fair and independent review. And for settlement, they're taking advantage of the opportunities and advantages. But between each of these programs, these 22 positions at a cost of about $5 million have accelerated over $100 million a year in added revenue, accelerated revenue. And so that's the key to being able to keep these cases moving, the process in place, and to at the same time not restrict the due process that the taxpayers have through the regulations.